All right, so let's move to the monster in the SEC as Georgia's going to go on the road and take on Tennessee. That line has gone all the way down to 3.5. Started higher than that. Now it's only 3.5. Georgia is favored, so a lot of sentiment, money coming in on Tennessee. And listen, rightly so. With the way that we saw these teams play over the opening couple of weeks suggests that Tennessee is maybe better than we thought, and there are a lot of questions surrounding Georgia, specifically the way their offense played against Austin P FCS last week. Is that a concern? Yes, that's absolutely a concern. And there's been a big part of me all week that has wanted to kind of jump on the bandwagon and go with Tennessee. But the more that you think about this, you start breaking it into chunks. And let's start with the offensive line for Georgia. They're going to be more healthy and I believe more effective in this game. Now, the environment's going to be crazy. There's no doubt. And that does make it difficult on an offensive line to be really aggressive. But they were without their guard and tackle last week. It looks like they're going to get their tackle, specifically Green, back at right tackle. And that was a particular area of weakness last week. So if that corrects itself, that's a huge, I think, momentum boost for Georgia as they're prepping for this game. So that's number one. Then you start looking at the quarterbacks. So let's look at these quarterbacks. It's always going to be a quarterback matchup, and both of these guys are going to be in an environment that is new for them. If you take Gunner Stockton, this is going to be his first real true road start or big road start. However, it's not his first big start because we saw him play when Beck got injured in the SEC championship game against Texas. We saw him start in the playoff game against Notre Dame. Those are huge moments, man, with the season on the line. So I'm less concerned that he's going on the road for the first time, although, as we know, because of crowd noise, operation of the offense becomes that much more difficult. But at least he's seen it. He's felt it. He's been there before, and I don't think it's going to be a giant surprise to him. Joey Aguilar, on the other hand, for Tennessee, he's never played a game like this one. I'm really glad for him that this one's at home. If this one was on the road, that would be a huge step up for him because he's never seen a team like Georgia. He just hasn't. Even all the experience that he has, he's never seen a team like Georgia. And certainly this environment is going to feel big, but at least he's at home. So you've got some pluses and minuses for both of those quarterbacks. And then you start to look at the overall matchup. All right, when you look at Kirby Smart facing a Josh Heupel team, it's been a lot of success for Kirby Smart. And Heupel has not been able to replicate the offensive explosiveness that he has against other teams when they play against Georgia. In fact, this is what the numbers bear out. In the 4 meetings between Kirby and Heupel, Georgia has outscored Tennessee by 80 points. 80. That's substantial. Okay, so you've got to take that under consideration. You also look at the fact that Tennessee has never scored more than 17 against Georgia. Even with some really, really good offenses and players. Well, why is that? Well, let's just step back for a moment and start talking about true matchup and game plan and why is it that Georgia can play well against Tennessee? The obvious answer is that they've got better players. Okay, we know that. They've got better players than almost anybody in the country because they've recruited that way and they've built their roster that way. So the defensive side of the football for Georgia is always going to be loaded. Well, why is that specifically tough for Tennessee? Well, and I've been talking about this, at length. And again, I know Tennessee fans don't like it, but this offense that Tennessee utilizes can be very explosive. What they generally utilize, not all the time, but generally, is the fact that in the passing game, they're going to run read routes that are read by the wide receiver down the field. They're called choice routes. All right. And there's some combination, a lot of them 2 receiver combinations, and the quarterback picks a side pre-snap and plays that combination. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure and expectation that the quarterback and the wide receiver are going to see the same thing in coverage and react the same way because they have to be on the same page. Those read routes happen about between 9 and 12 yards down the field. A lot of times the wide receiver is either going to be hooking and stopping on his route and then moving his way back towards the interior or towards the outside. Or if the defense is sitting, he takes off and goes deep. It's one of the reasons why Tennessee has been such an explosive offense over the last couple of years is because those read routes, if the defense gets nosy at all, they can just run right by them. And they don't have to technically call a go route or a big play. The offense creates that through the read on the outside. Again, it's not all they do, but it's a big portion of what they do in the passing game. Well, The reason that's difficult against Georgia is pretty obvious. When you've got players on the other side that can defend in man, the read becomes that much more difficult. In fact, the read is predicated on leverage and not defensive structure. So that becomes much more difficult for the wide receiver and the quarterback to be on the same page. The other thing that Georgia can do is they can play a bracket style of coverage. And so it's not a traditional zone coverage like they're playing cover 3 or cover 4 or cover 2. What they can do is they can play high low on a player or a combination on one side of the field, which means regardless of choice that the wide receiver makes, he's wrong because the bracket is high and low of that side of the field. Georgia is able to do that with their intricate secondary structure, and that's something that Kirby Smart does a really good job of. So that's the reason why Tennessee doesn't create the explosive plays against Georgia that they do against other teams. The pressure comes in, and the pressure point then is like, can you run the football well? Because if you can run the football well, then it forces Georgia to declare the defense, and then those reads start to manifest themselves and clear themselves up on the outside. Now, Georgia is uniquely equipped to deal with that from the defensive side. Their offense, though, I've got questions about. I told you, throwing 34 times with your starting quarterback against an FCS opponent, I'm not a huge believer. I'm not a huge believer. I do believe that this is going to be a low-scoring affair. I think that it's going to be difficult on Tennessee, and because of the road environment, it's going to be difficult on Georgia. I don't see either of these teams getting past 21, and if you just boil it all the way down, with the history of what Georgia and Tennessee do against each other, and the fact that Georgia's defense is uniquely built through both structure and talent with their personnel to stop an offense like Tennessee's, I wanted to take Tennessee in this game. I can't do it. I can't do it. I've got to go with Georgia. And just think of this too. And I know that this is an intangible, but it's correct. It's correct. One of these teams has been told how good they are for 2 weeks. That's Tennessee. The other team has Kirby Smart absolutely killing them this week after a poor performance and a win over Austin Peay. You are going to get, and I promise you this, the absolutely most focused version, physical version, and intense version of Georgia that you can possibly get because of the week of practice that they just had under Kirby Smart. We know that. So I've got to go Georgia here. I wanted to take Tennessee. I can't do it. I do think it's going to be low scoring. I like Georgia, and I think that they cover the 3.5. I see a game like 21-17. I think it could be close. I was tempted to take the points. I'm not going to do it. I'll take the Bulldogs. 21-17. They get the win on the road at Tennessee. Great out-of-conference game here. Texas A&M travels to South Bend to take on Notre Dame. Notre Dame is favored by 6.5. I think this is a massive game for Notre Dame for a lot of reasons, but more specifically because they lost to Miami. Without a ton on their schedule as it relates to really high-end quality opponents that would be great resume builders, this is a must-win for Notre Dame. I know it's early in the season, but if they're 10-2 and their losses are Miami and Texas A&M, I don't know what else is left on the schedule that get them to a point where they're winning arguments to get included into the college football playoff. So as it relates to the postseason, I really believe Notre Dame is under the gun here. They have to win this game. They're at home. They're favored by 6.5. They've got to beat Texas A&M. They fall to 0-2, and I think their playoff hopes might be over. This is a night game in South Bend, so I think that the environment is going to be there for Notre Dame. I think it's an underrated environment, maybe not like Texas A&M at night, and maybe Texas A&M is not going to be overwhelmed because of the environment they play at home, but it's going to be tough. And now you got a bit of film to work off of if you're Notre Dame. Remember now, you get to go out there and now adjust. What's the adjustment that Notre Dame may make in this game? Jeremiah Love touching the football much more. That's got to happen. I don't think he was utilized in that Miami game to the necessary amount for them to win the game. I think that putting the onus on CJ Carr on the road against that defense at Miami was an oversight by that coaching staff. I believe they will correct that, and they will force Texas A&M to first take away Love before they start to go on the perimeter and try to make it a passing game. Therefore, I like Love to have a huge game in this one. I don't really know about A&M's defense. I think that they're good. They're probably not great. They're certainly not Miami. and they certainly don't have the pass rush that Miami does with guys like Reuben Bain. I do like A&M this year, so I think that A&M could have a really solid year. Marcel Reed is a dynamic quarterback. He's going to have to be able to throw the football well in this one, just like Beck did against Notre Dame in that opening week win for the Hurricanes. He does have quality wide receivers. Both of them transfers come in, Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion. They can do it on the outside. I think that they're quality players. My question is like, will they have enough to win on the road? I'm not totally sure about that one. I liked what I saw from CJ Carr. I think Notre Dame goes back to the drawing board and they understand that getting Jeremiah Love more involved this time is going to help CJ Carr. And they're going to clarify some of those looks that he could be throwing into. And I think Notre Dame actually wins this game. Now, I do think it could be tight because, again, I'm a fan of Mike Elko, and I'm a fan of Texas A&M. I think that's a good football team. I don't think it's a great football team, whereas I think Notre Dame could be a great football team. So for me, I'm taking the Irish. I think that they cover the 6.5. Again, I wanted to take the points in this one, and I just kept thinking to myself, like, is 31-24 out of the question? Nope, it certainly isn't. It certainly isn't. In particular with the explosiveness of Love and them, I'm sure, leaning back into him and him touching the football 15, 16, 17 times. That's what I like. 6.5. I'm going to take Notre Dame 31-24. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. And you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.